Okay, so please put away your phone. Thank you, so that you are not distracted. Give me 40 minutes of your time. I appreciate it. We get out at 12:07, and I want to go over the things we got to go over. The first thing is, your question on the board says, what is a proxy? Write that down. We used proxies in our lab. We looked at one proxy, and I'm really hoping that a lot of you did the video work that was on the PaleoClimate lab. There were 3 videos that you were supposed to watch on the PaleoClimate lab. Did anybody watch those videos for me? Some people did. Did anybody watch them? Okay, so then on the back of your PaleoClimate lab, did anybody look at the last page on the PaleoClimate lab? Did anybody look at this last page? Let's read the directions, shall we, Nina, so that everybody knows what they should have done. How scientists find out about paleoclimates. Paleoclimates is the study of past climates. Since it's not possible to go back in time to see what climates were like, scientists use these imprints created during the past climate, known as proxies, to interpret paleoclimate. And then you've got these little links, and you were supposed to watch them. They're about 3 minutes each, and then you were to take notes. Let's see where that information was located for you. So if I go to Canvas and it says, watch me, daily recorded lesson, I'll go ahead and pull that up. Did you watch this part?
Yeah.
Yay! If we keep going, then it says, hey, at the end.
So somehow climates. It says paleoclimatology is the study of past climates, since it is not possible.
Right? And this is us now going ahead and following these directions. So what I'm going to ask you to do tonight is your homework tonight is to watch these little videos and fill this in. So if you need to remind yourself by writing something down, we're going to finish the activity sheet that you picked up on the way in, but this is homework for tonight. So Agni, do you have science homework tonight? Yes, you do. What is it?
Watch the video.
Watch the videos. Where are the videos located, man? Yeah, so you can go ahead and go to Canvas, and you can look at the document right here. It's a Google Doc, so if you open it up, the links are going to be fresh there. You're going to be able to click on them and watch them. Do you understand?
Yes.
Okay, so then let's just work on the one information, or on the one proxy that we have had information about. Let's go ahead and look at that. So with your pair-share partner, let's see if we can figure out what a proxy is, give an example, and explain how it works. Does anybody know what a proxy is?
What? What, the VPN?
Does anybody know what a proxy is? In
That's
terms
what it
of
means,
climate.
bro. So don't even.
Kind of. It's kind of like a point in time. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you time to write this down. I'm going to take attendance. I'm really hoping that all of you have your materials out. Talking to you, man. And then I'll go ahead and take attendance. We'll come back and we will walk through this together. It's going to be great. I'll give you 1 minute. Please, in that 1 minute's worth of time, don't be talking to anybody around you. Just give me a time moment to go ahead and take attendance, and then we'll work through this together. It's going to be great. Gone. I know that young man is here, gone. Don't jeopardize your success. Finn. Don't do that, man. People don't like that. Step it up. Yeah, thank you for asking. Just charge it and then come back, okay? This 4th hour, y'all?
Sadly.
Oh, thanks. That's hurtful. All right, let's go ahead and talk about proxies. Agni, do me a favor and turn that camera so that it's over here. All right, so I'm going to give you a sentence starter. A proxy is. So the first thing I want to know is, let's talk about indirect or direct evidence. If I say to Finn, Finn, take this thermometer, go outside and tell me what the temperature is. Is that direct evidence or indirect evidence?
Indirect. I don't know.
Actually, direct evidence. Why is it direct evidence? Because what? Yeah, you're exactly knowing what it is at this time. Nice dance moves, man, but
I didn't do anything.
yeah, you did.
I didn't do.
Dude, come on. Peripheral vision is something that every single human being. So a proxy is not direct evidence, it's indirect evidence. So if I said to Finn, go outside and tell me what the temperature was like 5,000 years ago, he couldn't go back 5,000 years and directly give me the temperature. So a proxy is indirect evidence. It's indirect evidence that shows us what temperature or precipitation was like in the past. So that's what a proxy is, and we use proxies in climate. You should be writing this down, man, but I can't force you to be you. A proxy is indirect evidence that shows us what temperature or precipitation was like in the past. What would be an example of a proxy? What did we use in our lab? We were trying to figure out what the climate was like in Colorado thousands of years ago. What evidence were we using? Because we weren't around in Colorado 5,000, 7,000, 10,000 years ago. So what evidence were we looking at? What were the little tiny punches of paper supposed to represent?
Oh, the pollen.
There you go. So an example would be fossilized pollen. Okay, that's what we used in the lab. Now, we have to be able to explain how fossilized pollen can tell us about a past climate. Are you with me so far? Okay. How many of you have ever seen a palm tree up close, like alive? Great. Where were you? Lauren, where were you? Florida. Why did you need to be in Florida in order to see a palm tree? Why did you need to be in Florida in order to see a palm tree?
Because it's more.
I'm not asking you, I'm asking Lauren. Okay, so what? Yeah. Are we ever going to find a palm tree growing in the backyard here?
Well,
I can't see.
No, not naturally, because palm trees do not grow in a temperate climate. Palm trees only grow in a tropical climate. And so how it works is certain plants only grow in certain climates. Michael, stop. Certain plants only grow in certain climates. If we see a plant's pollen in the soil, this gives us the climate during that plant's life. Do you understand? So if I said, Agni, here's a shovel. Go dig me a hole 5 feet deep. And at the bottom of that 5 foot deep hole, Agni finds fossilized remains of a palm tree. That means that at that level of the soil, we know that it had to have been a tropical climate where palm trees could have grown. So in our lab from yesterday, this PaleoClimate lab, how far did you get? Did you figure out which plants grow in what types of climate? Did you use this? Okay. Were you able to figure out the order that the sediment layers were in? Were you able to figure out the order of the sediment? What did you do yesterday? You had a full day in class. What were you doing yesterday? Did we not do anything yesterday in class?
I did some.
This was the lab. Did you do this?
No.
This was the lab. Did you do this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you did this. Can you tell me where you left off in the lab, please? Can you get your lab out? Get your lab out and let's see where we left off. Because you had a whole lot of time, and I'm wondering if yesterday was a whole lot of like, you did very little, and then you kind of did nothing for the remainder of the time, which means you're going to be very behind when we get the exam. Let's look at the lab. So at the lab, PaleoClimate lab, were we figuring, oops, you can't see this, I apologize. Did we figure this out? Right, it says find the model sediment core that's located in your class. Did anybody read this and say, oh, hey, we've got to do this? Okay, so here's the model of the sediment core in the class. Determine what the overall pattern of climate change was during these last 10,000 years. Did any group in here do that? You did, great. So then could you tell me what was the pattern that should have been? What was the very top layer, Amelia?
I got C.
Okay, did anybody else have C?
Yep.
Okay, so we've got C as the top, and then what was the one below that? F, can I have corroboration on that? Okay, so we've got F. Can someone tell me what was below that?
R.
B?
B?
R.
There wasn't an R. Can someone tell me what was next?
E. I got E. Yeah,
You got
I got
E?
Too.
Agni, can I have your phone, please? Because you're distracting yourself and you're distracting me. I can't do my teaching when I have to like go ahead and make sure you're not on your phone. Give it. Give it. I'm not asking you, I'm telling you. Don't jeopardize your success, man. All right, so I have two different groups. One group says B, one group says E. Can I have a third group maybe break the tie? Okay, skip that one. Let's go ahead and look at the next one. What do we think this is?
D. Yeah, D too.
D, do you have D? Okay, so we have agreement on that. And then what about this last one?
A.
A? Okay, so then the only one left is? All right, so then do we know what the climate was based on what flowers or plants? Man, could you get out your lab? Can we tell what the climate was based on how these plants are growing? For example, if you look at meadow grasses and wildflowers, if there's a lot of a percentage of them, not if there's like 2 or 1%, but if there's like a lot of percentage of meadow grasses and flowers, it says these grow in warm summer temperatures and summer drought. What's a drought?
Where everything dries out.
Right, so it's warm and dry. So you have to tell me, is it warm, dry, cold, wet, warm, wet? Those are your only combinations. So did we figure out what the climate was like in each one of these?
Only some of them.
Okay, so which ones did you figure out?
For F, it's very cold and windy.
Okay, so cold is just part of it. Did anybody else have F was cold? Okay, did anybody have the precipitation that was part of that? Because you have to have temperature and precipitation for climate. What about any of the other layers?
For B, I put warm and moist.
Warm and moist? Did anybody else have warm and moist? That because you're in the same group, right? Or are you in a different group? You're in the, okay, so we've got warm and we've got moist. I'm just going to say warm, wet climate. Okay, E. Did anybody have E? Anyone at all?
Cool and wet.
You had cool and wet. Can I have corroboration that it was cool? Okay, so yeah, we feel good about that one. Cool and wet. What about D?
T was for green.
What?
T.
T.
The T. I forgot the T. D? Hmm? You have the C? What did you think? Oh, I'm sorry. We have C. What did you think C was? Warm. Warm and dry. Okay. What about the last one or the last two? D and A. Anybody?
Dry for
Dry, but moist.
Cold and dry.
Can't be dry and moist, so you say cold and dry. Can anybody say also that it was cold and dry? Maybe not. Okay. What about A?
I meant that for A, sorry.
A is cold and dry?
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Okay, so A is cold and dry. What about D? Anyone?
Are they both cool?
I didn't do these.
What about F? We've got cold temperatures. Anything else for moisture? Well, what are some of the flowers in, can someone tell me, what are some of the plants that were located in F? Somebody give me some plants in F. Look at your data table and please tell me what are some plants in F. Man, could you get out your lab? Anybody, could you just tell me what in baggie F did we have for plants? Give me one. Who was here yesterday? Raise your hand. Okay, so did you write down on your data table what you had, what percentages were in F? Did we do that? Okay. Did everybody share the data? Okay, can someone tell me what were some plants that were found in F? Give me one, Amelia. Limber pine. Okay, so if I look at limber pine, it says these endure the harshest of climates. These pines live in high on ridge tops. Okay, so if you go up high in a mountain, what happens to the temperature? It gets cooler, so we know it's cold, right, potentially. And it says strong winds, cold temperatures, drought, and poor soil. So drought means what?
Dry.
That means dry. So it could be cold and dry. Let's go ahead and look at a different plant just to make sure. Was there another high amount of another plant in there? Lodgepole pine. Let's check out lodgepole. Lodgepole pine says found in areas of very cool climates, typically growing in poor soils, often at high altitudes under the present climate. So again, cold doesn't say anything about moisture. Is there another one that we can look at? Bristlecone pine, growing close to and association with the lodgepole pine. These trees survive in the harshest temperatures and climates. Okay, anything else, or is that it? If that was it, then we have to go with what kind of a climate? Cold and dry. So F has to be cold and dry based on the information that we have. Let's go ahead and look at D. Okay, because D, it looks like we are missing some data on that. Come on, pen. All right, so F is cold and dry. Let's go ahead and look at D. Does anybody have any ideas on D? Okay, can you tell me what kinds of things were found in D?
Pears.
Ponderosa pine. All right, ponderosa pine, long-needled, ponderosa. Okay, so warm, dry slope. So maybe it's warm and dry, but let's find another plant just to make sure. What other plants were in that one? Yep. Aspen. Okay, so we've got some aspen. Okay, so the most widely distributed tree in North America. It lives in many soil types, is a pioneer tree, lives after forest fires, short-lived, replaced by conifers. Aspen can live in areas where there's water present, but cannot withstand the damage from deep-packed snow. Okay, so it doesn't look like it can handle a lot of snow. That doesn't give me a lot of information. Could you please give me another one? Finn.
Douglas fir.
Okay, Douglas fir. Okay, mountainside forest, habitat south-facing ponderosa, open pine forest. Douglas fir is usually found on the north slope. It prefers moderately cool to warm sites, growing best under temperate, moist conditions. So it looks like I've got two things in here that possibly could be under moist conditions, and it says cool to warm. So we could go ahead and think to ourselves, maybe there's a transition happening there, right? Because maybe we can say cool to warm, and it looks like it might be a moist environment.
Yeah.
Sound good? Fabulous. So now we can see how the climate has changed over time. Are you with me? On the exam, you have to do this. I'm giving you plants. I'm telling you the plants that, the areas that the plants grow in. You have to figure out how the climate has changed in a certain area that I give you. Do you understand?
What's number C again?
Yeah, what's number C? I didn't get C.
Is it still warm and dry?
and I think F was cold and dry too. Good? Okay. Now, we have some data here that tells us how this climate actually changed over the years. And I left it right here, and now it looks like it's not here, so that's cool. Okay, thank you. All right, so let's go ahead and read what we've got here. About 10,000 to 8,000 years before present. This is the very bottom label right here. So we're looking at the very bottom one. Everybody look to the very bottom. It says cold and dry, yes? That's what we figured out. Let's see if we were right. This period was right after the last glacier. It was a cold time with gradual warming. The cold temperatures at the end of the Pleistocene period were giving way to the warming trends of the Holocene. The era was characterized by a very short growing season. The landscape resembled an Arctic alpine tundra with the meadows dominated by alpine grasses, daisies, alpine sage, and sedges. Scattered trees, the cold-tolerant Engelmann spruce, some willows, and aspens began to appear toward the end of this period in scattered tree islands. So it looks like that's right, cold and dry. It was just at the end of the last ice age. Number 5, this one, where it says cold to warm and moist conditions. This is between 8,000 years and 300 and 500 years before present. Now we're entering a warmer era. The vegetation was dominated by Douglas fir, ponderosa pine, aspen, meadow grasses, and wildflowers, similar to what we now see on a Jacobson farm. These species tend to grow best under temperate, somewhat moist conditions. So it's that dry or that cold, kind of warm, moist conditions. All right. Now 4, right here, this layer E. This was between 3,500 years ago to 1,500 years ago. Now we are entering a cooler and moist period which succeeds or comes after the past warmer climate. The predominant vegetation species are Engelmann spruces, limber, lodgepole, and bristlecone pines, aspen, and wet peat plants such as sedges, willows, and mosses. At about 2,000 years before time, peat from the Jacobson's peat bog began to develop and grow in this cooler, wetter climate. And you were right, it was a cool, wet climate. Do you see how we're doing? Yes? How we can go ahead and figure this out? Miles, you're shaking your head yes, but you don't even know what I'm talking about. You're worrying me.
That's not, you're legit.
All right, so what we're going to do now is let's go ahead and tuck this away. I want you to get out your tree rings that you picked up on the way in, because tree rings are another kind of proxy. And tonight, do you have homework?
Yeah.
Yes, what is your homework? Watch these videos, they're about 3 minutes long, watch them, and then figure out in trees, how's the evidence preserved, how can it tell us about past climates, and how long ago can we get climate information on this, right? Tree only lives how long? We can't go back 1,000,000 years and look at tree data, right? So those are the things I want you to be thinking about. All right. So everyone please get out your tree ring data. Hopefully you have, or you're going to put that in your table of contents. And let's do a little intro. It says, what do you think the light and dark rings of a tree represent? And how many of you have ever seen the inside of a tree before?
Yes.
Great. I'm going to give you a ring, a little sample of trees that we sliced into. If you could please take one of these and pass it down, I would greatly appreciate after you look at it. And if we look at a tree kind of like section, we can see that there's lots of different rings. What do we know about tree rings? What can tree rings tell us about a tree? It can tell us how old it is. That's really great. But have we ever gone past that in terms of information? If we look at this section, we can see that each ring has a lighter portion and a darker portion. With your pair share partners, please turn and talk. What do you think the light and the dark rings of a tree represent? Turn and talk that out on your marks, get set, go. So we know each ring represents 1 year. What do we think the light or the dark parts represent in that year?
Older and younger parts.
a hypothesis. He's saying it could possibly be the older and the younger parts of the ring. Kind of, sort of correct, but not really. Okay, how about this? If we look at those trees that are out there, why are they suddenly getting leaves on them now?
Because it's.
Because of the weather.
The
Okay,
weather.
what happens to them in the wintertime? Are they
They
dead?
fall off.
They die. No,
Do
not
trees
die, but
really
all the
die and
leaves fall.
resurrect?
They fall off, the leaves fall off.
Okay, and so what happens to them in the winter?
They just,
They
They
go into
went-
hibernation.
That's it, they hibernate.
like a bear.
They hibernate like a bear, right? And so when we're talking about the light and the dark rings of a tree, we're talking about the different seasons. Okay, we're talking, no, we're not throwing things. We're talking about the different seasons. The light section represents spring and summer. The dark part of the ring is fall and winter. Please write that down. If we look at the next question, what might be the significance of the thickness of the ring? You told me we can count the rings to figure out the age. We figured out that the light section and dark section of the ring means summer, spring, and then winter and fall. But why are some of them thick and some of them thin? What can that tell us? Turn with your pair share partners and talk that out. Ready, set, go. All right, 3, 2, 1, and we're done. What do we think? Thickness of a ring can show us what's happening during those seasons. What do you think, Finn? Okay, what do you think? How much the tree grew, that's right. So some rings are thicker. That means what as far as growth for that year? More growth. Some rings are thinner. That means what for growth of the tree that year? Right, it didn't grow very well, and we have to try to figure out why that is. So then the next thing we're going to do, it says part A, let's investigate. It asks you to examine the photo that shows tree growth rings from a Douglas fir. I put this picture for you on the back of your paper so that everybody now has their own. Notice the arrow that marks the growth ring that formed 550 years before present. So if you could please turn over your paper, you will see that on the back there's a picture of a Douglas fir, and there's a number that says 550 and an arrow. That ring represents 550 years before it was cut down. So what I want you and your pair share partners to do is I want you to please follow the instructions. I will get you through the first one. What do you think was the youngest ring located? How does a tree grow? How does a tree grow? Where are the, how about this? Where's the brand newest ring on the tree? The outer ring, yep. The brand newest one is on the outside of the ring. This is the newest. That means the oldest ring is located where? In the center. This is when the tree was a baby. It was just a sapling. Please write that down. Okay, you have to be able to follow along. That was A. A, youngest rings located. The oldest rings are located. So fill out A. Okay, now you and your pair share partner work together. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to see how you can struggle through this, and then we will come together and we will talk about it. If you need your calculators, you can go ahead and use your phones, but I want you and your partner to see if you can figure out how to do this, and your time starts now. Nina, I need you to stop coloring. Although it's beautiful, you are not using your time wisely. I don't want to have to tell anybody, hey, this is what she's spending her time doing in my class.
You're legit jeopardizing
Leave it
your
on
success.
and then
You're
for
literally
youngest,
jeopardizing it.
And then pull edge for all this.
Are you my partner? So I don't have to partner.
I don't think that's a good idea, Mike.
I promise it is.
You're not going to be thinking, you're just going to be taking information and not processing.
Carlos, would you like to be my partner?
Sure.
Sure, buddy. Come here, bud.
Thanks, Carlos.
You're welcome.
Work with your partner. See what you can do. Look at the tree.
The younger is the.
We got like 20 minutes. We are good on time. I'll give you 10 minutes to get through this. We can do it. Ramsey, can I work with you?
Not all of those rings look identical.
No, the wet erase marker was when I had them laminated. Now you can draw all over your own picture because it's your picture.
Inside is darker.
Wait, what is the question we're answering?
What, honey?
Inside is darker, the outside is lighter.
All of them.
Alright, right now.
You're going through all of them. Yeah, go through all of them. See if you can do this on your own, and then we'll come back together.
The center is darker than the outside.
The one that was given, like, put down right away. Like, not right away, but like the last one that was put down.
Alright, we're on 2 now. Alright, read it. Follow your arrows. Starting point. The number of the rings to the change in the way the ring looks. One ring is how many rings for the arrow? It started changing like right here, this right here, third, that's like 28. You gonna count all them lines?
Here to here, that's 500.
This is like right here, right. Alright, count the lines. What's the question? Where do we start at, Mr. Green? Center or the?
And the tree was cut down in 2000. What year did the tree ring come in?
The change in the way we're doing the
Like, bro, sit down.
No, you're not. You're just trying to get the information from somebody else.
I'm doing it with Carlos.
What year did the tree ring never look different from the ring in the center? The ring
Yeah, the outside are thinner than the inside. What's your question, Mike?
I was asking you, where do we start from when we count the lines?
Where does it say to start from, bro?
The arrow. Oh, the arrow. Oh, my bad. I got it. Assuming that the tree was cut down in the year 2000. What year did the tree ring begin?
Well, I got that.
One second. 230. Jeopardize your success. What? Jeopardize.
Each ring has a white section and a black section. You have to count them together.
I play tennis.
So it's not like 1, 2, it's just 1.
I play tennis.
Oh.
Use the timer to empty your arrow as you start it. You're gonna use this as a starting point.
Where you get that shirt from?
This one ring.
Shut up. So for real.
What's up, Taylor?
Are you going to the bathroom?
As soon as Aggie comes back, you go.
What?
He's gonna be gone for 10 minutes.
Where hopefully he won't.
He's
Go
gonna be
ahead.
gone.
Well, we will see if he's gone for 2 minutes.
Okay.
Miss McGrain, what?
Oh, I did not.
We're gonna go ahead and talk about that. Okay, I just want you to see if you can read directions and get through.
Got it. Yo. Alright, where the rings begin to different. I'm telling you, it's legit right there. We're on this one right here. What are you doing? We're on this one right here. That's exactly the one I was talking about. Oh, you on this one?
Count 'em, bud.
Alright, start counting. You carry them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
It's for the,
Well, honey.
I need help with.
Okay, we got 28 seconds and then I'm gonna help people. But I wanna see what we can do in the last 28 seconds on this. We're gonna go through it. I promise.
28.
Okay, we got 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There's our timer. All right, my dears, let's go ahead and do this together. So, the first part, it says, use a wet erase marker. I'm on letter C, number 1. Use a wet erase marker to mark the place where there's a change in the tree rings. It goes from thick to thin. So, Ramsey and I marked it right there. That is where we see the change from thick to thin. Do we agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Using the 550-year arrow as a starting point, count the number of rings to the center. So when you count the number of rings, remember each ring has a dark and a light part. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many did we get? How many did we get from here to the center? When you counted, how many did you get? Huh? 29. Did everybody get 29, 30, something like that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to write down 29. So that was letter A, 2A. From arrow to tree center, we counted and we got 29. Now, from your arrow to the mark you made as far as when it changed, let's count that. I'm not going to count this again because I counted it all the way down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7. Does anybody have something close to that? 7 or 8? Okay.
Yeah.
So then that one is going to be from here. Oops, I'm sorry. I did that wrong. From here to here. From here to here, I have 7. So we've got 29 down there, and we've got 7 there. Are we good so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's assume that the tree was cut down in the year 2000. What ring represents the year 2000? Which ring represents the year 2000? It was cut down in the year 2000. Which one is the most brand newest ring? The outer ring. So that's when it was cut down. It was cut down in the year 2000. I'm just going to write the year 2000 up here. I would suggest you do that too. Okay. So, oh, I'm sorry. I missed letter B. Assuming that each ring represents 1 year, how old is the tree? If this was 550 years before it was cut down, what is the entire amount of rings?
580.
We have about 580, 570, right? So the entire year age or age of tree, age equals about 580 years. I would agree with that. Because what we did was we said we know there's 550 years here, and then let's just count the rest of them. Okay, so now we're on C. Assume that the tree was cut down in the year 2000. What year did the tree rings begin to look different from the rings in the center? If this is the year 2000, how do we figure out what this mark is right here? How do we figure that out? Did anybody come up with a number?
No. I think that's where everyone got wrong stuff.
Okay, so then let's figure out a couple ways that we could do it. One way we could do it is start with the year 2000. Let's start with the year 2000 because we know the year 2000 is there. Now, I know for sure this was 550 years before it was cut down. So in order to figure out what this layer's date is, what do I need to do? I subtract, that's right. So 2000 subtract 550, get out your calculators, your phones, whatever you need. That should be the year 1450. Now that's this year though. I don't want to know this year, I want to know this year. So now what do I have to do to get up to this year? I add 7 years. So I could say plus 7 and I get the year 1457. That's one way you could do it. Another way you could do it is you could take 550, you could go ahead then and add on, right? Or excuse me, would you add or subtract? You could add on that and then subtract that total from the year 2000. So we've got the year 1457. When did Columbus sail the ocean blue? 1400 and...
I can Google it.
Nobody knows that? Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Like,
So this tree was around before Columbus
Yo.
discovered the Americas, right? Discovered South and North America. Okay, so now we've got the year. The year is 1457. Do you have that written down?
What I'll put in this book right?
Mike, I'm worried you don't pay attention, man.
I
Look
do
at
pay attention.
Look
Never
at
mind.
2B. Look at 2B. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, 2C. 1457.
Alright.
Compare the date that you calculated in step 2 to the graph that shows the change in temperature for the last 1,000 years. Which graph are we looking at if we're looking at temperature change for the last 1,000 years, Nina? Which one? Which graph is showing us the temperature change for the last 1,000 years, Nina? The first one, what's the title of the graph? Little Ice Age, because if you look, this is 1900, and then we go back, right, 1,000 years. So the question is saying, compare the date that you calculated in step 2 to this graph. What happened to the climate during that time that the rings changed? So down here, you have to look for what year? 1457. So 1457 is right around here. What was going on with the temperature during that time?
It was dropping.
Dropping. Write that down and then say that we were entering a little ice age, or we were in a little ice age. All right. And then if we look at 3B, from these observations that you've made, what would you hypothesize is the correlation or the relationship, the connection between thickness of tree rings and climate? Thinner tree rings means what about climate?
Warm.
It was colder.
It was
Colder.
colder.
Yeah.
Thinner tree rings means a colder climate, less growth. You write that down under 3B. Correlation, connection. We found that if it gets colder, certain trees will have thinner rings. It'll have less growth during that time period. So that's how tree rings can work really good to help us figure out a climate. However, right, that's indirect evidence because we're not around, 550 years ago, but this tree was, and we can go ahead and look at its rings to tell us if climate changed. The problem is, though, it only goes back so far. Let's look at this other graph because the last question says, examine the graph B that shows temperature change for the last 160,000 years. How does the duration, meaning the length of time of the Little Ice Age, compare to the length of time of this ice age? How does it compare? Which one's longer, which one's shorter? How does the Little Ice Age compare in length of time to the graph B? On that ice age it's showing. How long did this ice age last? A couple hundred years? Let's see, right? It looks like we got 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, maybe 400 or 500 years. How long did this ice age last here? Aggie, man, you gotta go faster because I got a lot of people that were waiting to go until you came back, man. How long did this ice age last?
120,000.
Hundreds of years? About 100,000 years. So one is longer than the other. Do you understand that? See that from the graph?
Yeah.
Okay. So the problem is I don't have a tree that's 100,000 years old and I can go back and look at its growth rings. So if I want to find out climate from this long ago, I got to find some other indirect evidence of stuff that was around that long. Watch those videos tonight for homework so that you know what evidence is out there that allows us to go back 100 100,000 years in the past and determine an area's climate. Do you understand? Yes? So we have homework. Could you write it down somewhere? Put it in your phones. Remind yourself that you have homework. What are you doing, man? Did you get it stuck? Or are you trying to get it stuck?
Nah, he's trying to get his stuff in his brain.
So we have time or no time? Oh, we got like 4 minutes. We are not going to be up waiting by the door. Could you please shut that off? Have yourself a seat until